Hi there, Kimberly Flanagan of Kimberly's Quilts. If you've ever wondered about the different options when it comes to cropping in Pro Stitcher, the inside crop, the outside crop, and the open and closed edges, this video is for you. I'm a former Handi Quilter National Educator, and I still teach for several shops, both virtually and in person. And I recently was teaching, and a student said this was the thing that confused her the most. Could I please create a video so that she could constantly go back and use it as a refresher so that she would know when she should be using which feature? So here we are. This one's for you. So let's start with me sharing my screen, and we will jump into Pro Stitcher and we will start working through this. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to come in here and we're going to open a design. We're going to start with, excuse me, we're going to start with edge to edge designs. Let's try and find something fun. Let's do these crayons. So now I've got my design. Now I need to go in, and we're starting with an edge to edge. So we're going to come in here and we are going to go to the area tab, and we're going to do a 2-corner area. For those of you that know me, you know that I'm want to work smarter, not harder. So I don't walk all over my sewing room setting up my areas. I start in the upper left-hand corner, about 1.5 inches or so off the top left and the top. And then I come over here and I just use the buttons over here. And if my quilt is 60 by 80, I'm going to make my area say 63 by 83. I absolutely measure my quilts before I load them. I don't just put my width in there and say, oh, I'm going to make it 120 and then crop at the bottom, because you do not end up with a balanced design when you do that. I have a video on balanced designs and the correct way to set up an edge to edge. If you're not familiar with that, please go check out that video, and you'll learn a lot from why I say you should not guess at your height and then just crop off at the bottom. So now I've got my design in here. So now we can go in here and we can say repeat. I'm going to fill it up. I hit the fill button, but if you notice here, I've still got gaps on all 4 sides. And I want to make sure that I'm actually going off the edges, or I'm stitching all the way off and filling up the entire quilt. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a horizontal repeat, and I'm going to add a vertical repeat. And now you can see that I've got this pink box of my area completely filled up. So now I'm ready to go in and do some cropping. So I'm going to come in here under modify and I'm going to crop. We are not talking today about cropping start and end points. This video is only focused on inside, outside, and the edges and what the difference are and why. So if I come in here and I'm doing a basic edge to edge, I'm going to crop the outside. I want all of that over stitching outside my area to not stitch. It takes time, it takes thread, we don't want to do that. We want to be more efficient. But what that causes, if we zoom in here, in this top, we've got all these little red and green points. Those are start and stop points. And that's where the design ends, because we've cropped it and it needs to move to the next starting location to pick up that design again. There are times that you would want those start and end points, and there's times that you would not. That's where this edges comes in. When I'm doing a basic edge to edge, I close my edges. Watch what happens to all these red and green start and stop points when I click that. They go away. Now, what's going to happen when you're stitching is it will get to one of those stop points, and instead of doing a jump, your machine is going to stitch over to where that next start point is, and it's going to continue stitching. It may create a buildup thread where it's stitching over itself multiple times, getting from point A to point B. That's fine, because we're going to cut that off anyway, and we don't care. That's in the batting. It's going to go in the trash anyway. So that's fine. I don't have to continually hit resume. I don't have to continually sit there and babysit the machine and watch it start and stop and start and stop, because you know that's just a lot of wasted time. So now I have my outside edges, or my outside crop, and my edges closed. Okay. So now I can come in here and I can baseline this and I can start stitching. Okay. So what would have happened? I'm going to undo some of that. What would have happened when we were at this point if I had said crop inside? Well, let's scroll out and see. When I click crop inside, it creates almost like a picture frame. I have used this feature when I want to do something. I want this to be like a border around a block. If you want it to be like a frame, this is a great little trick to do that. But I wanted an edge to edge. So I want all of my stitching to be in the middle of this quilt. So I'm going to undo that, and we're going to crop the outside again, and we're going to close our edges. Now I'm going to come in here and baseline. Why did I do that? Because now I'm going to jump in and show you how I would use inside crop and what the most common use of it might be. So if I come in here and say I've got some machine embroidery, or I've got an element in my fabric that I want to showcase, maybe I've got a little trapunto happening in the quilt, or maybe I've got some applique and I don't want to stitch over it, because especially imagine if you had trapunto or machine embroidery that had a little bit of loft to it, and then I just went in with my long arm and I quilted over it. That would really screw up the purpose of that. So now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to cut out an area around that design element that I don't want to stitch over. So we've got to go back to my area. And the first thing to know about areas is that Pro Stitcher will only allow you to have one area active at a time. So if I want to create another area, I have to come over here and clear that area out. That's no big deal, because honestly, you don't need that area when you're stitching. I a lot of times remove that area anyway, because I don't want it cluttering up my screen. I don't need that pink box there when it's adding no value to my stitch out. So let's pretend that we can see our quilt on our frame, and we're going to come in here and we're going to do a multi-point area around the design element that I want to cut out. And this could be, it could be that embroidery, it could be that trapunto, it could be that, you know, flower in the quilt. So now I have I'm going to zoom in here so that you guys can see my area. Now I have my area there, and this is the area that I do not want stitching to occur in. Well, now when I go to modify and crop, if now I want to crop the inside, I want that area to not be stitched on. But what do I have here? I have a whole bunch of these little, I'm going to zoom in for you, these little red and green start and stop points. These are your edges. And in this scenario, I want those little start and stop points. If I close those edges and it stitches back and forth, let's scroll in here. Let me zoom in right here. I've got all these little start and stop points. I don't want it stitching back and forth between these red and green dots and thread buildup, and I might get stitching in this area, but I might not have any in this area. So in this scenario, I want my edges to be opened, and I do not want that thread buildup to occur. So I will use the edges feature to leave them turned on or turned off, so that I'm not getting that thread buildup. I'm not stitching around that applique. I'm not doing any of that stuff. You can see here with the red dotted line all of the jumps that will occur. So what if you're doing a design and you actually want a stitch out of this area that you have now cropped out because you want to stitch around it once or maybe twice to have it, what I call an end to your design here, and it just doesn't randomly stop, it stops at a thread. The way in which you would do that, I would come in here and baseline this. Before I remove this area to set it up around a different design element, come into Pro Stitcher, and when you have the quilt highlighted, you have an option here called Trace Area. And when I hit Trace Area, you'll see here that now it's going to stitch exactly around that area. And now you're going to have that area stitched out. If I wanted a double run, for those of you that are familiar with embroidery, of this area, meaning I just want 2 layers of thread there, I just want it a little bit more pronounced, I will come into Pro Stitcher without moving my machine, without moving anything, and I will just hit Trace Area a second time, and it will stitch it out a second time. I've got 2 layers of thread there. Very familiar to a double run for those with embroidery. And now when I go back and I clear this area, because remember, I don't need this for stitching, and I stitch my edge to edge, it's going to come to one of these stop points and then jump to the next start point and continue stitching. No thread buildup, no issues, nothing. So that's the difference between inside and outside crop, open and closed edges, and why and when you might need them. So I hope that answered the question. If you're finding my tips helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. I'm all about making sure that if you've invested all this money into these tools, that you know how to use them efficiently and you get the most out of them. Thanks.